always get what I want. Why did you let him live?
You bought a gladiator, not a slave. My will is my own.
How blue is your blood? Perhaps the heart of a Roman beats in that chest. The greatest temple Rome ever built, the Colosseum, because this is what they believe in, power. They gather here to watch the strong strike down the weak.
There has to be something else.
There is nothing else.
There has to be another Rome.
There is no other Rome. The dream? The dream of Rome? It's an old man's fantasy.
Who are you? What was your name before you traded it for a Roman one?
You'll never know. I have a destiny. The gods delivered you to me. You will be my instrument.
I will never be your instrument in this life or the next.
I'll just come out and say it. This film sort of falls into the why bother category for me, and it's mainly for two reasons. I get the sense while watching Gladiator 2 that, like a lot of Ridley Scott's films, half of this film is probably already on the cutting room floor, or is still on the cutting room floor, because the feeling I get while watching this is that it's simultaneously overstuffed with subplots and characters, but then it's also lacking the running time to cover it all. And I feel like at this point, Ridley Scott, it seems like he films his movies with a longer cut in mind that inevitably gets trimmed for theaters, and then they're just like, a year after it comes out on Blu-ray, they're like, okay, let's put the director's cut out there. Let's put the actual cut out there. And then inevitably, all of the movie reviewers go gaga for that director's cut. And they're like, this is the real cut. And so, yeah, I don't know. It feels that way to me because there are entire subplots in this film that go nowhere. And I can just see where the seams are, and then the other reason why this doesn't really work for me is, like a lot of the belated sequels that we've been getting these days, like The Force Awakens and The Incredibles 2, this movie is such a retread of the first movie in that a soldier is haunted by the death of a family member. He is sold into slavery. He proves himself in a smaller arena. He is promised revenge by his slave owner. He makes his way to the Colosseum in Rome, where he gains the respect of the crowd and his fellow slaves. They rally around him, yada, yada, yada. And that's kind of what both these movies are. And it's... Welcome to Theater and Stream, a film podcast. I am Matt, that is Chuck, this is episode 57. Sir Ridley Scott is back with his mandatory one movie a year, and he's playing with a familiar toy box. 25 years removed from the original historical epic starring Russell Crowe, Gladiator 2 has hit silver screens across the world. This movie is in fact a sequel to that film, but you would not be entirely wrong if you also wanted to call it a remake. We're going to talk about why exactly that is the case in our featured review. First up, we have a massive news story. We have a watch list headlined by the latest and greatest TV shows and movies. And of course, we're going to bring it all home with the Mentionables at the end of the show. Please do hit that thumbs up button, and more importantly, subscribe if you have not. Otherwise, Chuck, anything else you wanted to mention before we got into the meat of things?
Oh my goodness. Well, first and foremost, file this feature review under one of those things that, like, dear God, who asked for this? Besides Ridley Scott, who just needs to fill his schedule, because apparently we're getting another Alien movie out of him. Which is kind of something we asked for. But, otherwise the big, I guess, news coming into this episode was It's old news to everybody else, but it sure had our attention when it was happening. Was the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight, which, I have a lot of thoughts, about, like the fight aspect of it. And it's going to be pretty dull on the video side of things just because I don't want anyone copywriting, this video and striking it down. But what did you make of the user experience when you were watching this?
Yeah, so I had no plans to actually even watch this, but I just found it was so it was like our culture turned back into a monoculture for one night only.
Yeah.
And it was everywhere. And so I was like, okay, let me just load up Netflix on my phone and see what this is all about. And of course, I was one of the many people who had issues, and so I kind of gave up after about 10 minutes of trying to make this work. But essentially, what happened was Netflix's live. This was a live event, and it's one of very few live events that Netflix has tried to put on, and they kind of buckled. They kind of buckled under the stress of people wanting to watch this. I think it was about 60 million households in the United States tuned into this. And users reported just constant buffering. The video quality was locked at 720p or lower for some people, even if you pay for like the more expensive video options. The audio was out of sync for some people. There was all these issues with the microphones and the headsets of the ringside commentators. It was just not a great live event. And so we'll get into more about, what we think, how this bodes for the future of Netflix's events. But yeah, how was your experience with this?
Well, it was, watching it on my phone on the kitchen line at Buffalo Wild Wings during the most horrendous night of work I've ever had there, because not only was the place packed all night long, there also was a ton of people at home ordering in. It got to the point where we couldn't put to-go orders in the warmer. They went on top of the warmer because we had so many in-house orders that weren't being moved because our wait staff was so bogged down. So I don't know if you anybody's ever done food service work, you could probably relate to that. But as I'm trying to watch this thing, on my phone, of course, I'm probably one of the users whose priority is lower, in their server's totem pole. So I was constantly getting error messages and getting bumped. When I would reload it, it would bring me back to where I left, as opposed to taking me to the live point. And yeah, along with all of the production issues you noted and other people noted, it's just very clear that Netflix isn't ready to like buy the rights to the Super Bowl yet. Because if you can barely handle 60 million households, how are you going to handle like 1 billion people tuning in, or like whatever ratings the Super Bowl gets these days? Because like I'm sure that's their dream. Like that's what Amazon certainly is hoping they can angle towards. That's the golden goose right now when it comes to these platforms. And yeah, this was an interesting swing, but yeah, it's just sad that our monoculture moment was for what essentially was a scripted boxing match. Because like, do you know the information that's come out about the contracts behind this event?
Yeah, wasn't there something about like Jake Paul had it in his contract that he couldn't lose? Or was that the issue?
Essentially.
Yeah.
Because like how it worked was the only way Tyson could get paid was if he lost. Like he would, the only way he could get his fully guaranteed money is if it went the distance and he lost. If he knocked Paul out in the first round, he'd got no money.
Oh my God.
So like,
Jeez.
yeah, you're basically giving this guy no other choice but to fight the way he did. And meanwhile, everyone in the building, you could hear how like everyone was invested in the early rounds when it seemed like Tyson was up in points, and and like it seemed like he had a shot, but when it became evident that he wasn't trying to like go for a killing blow, like we're used to seeing this guy do, you could just the whole energy just died, and everyone just got pissy. Like all the kids I was working with just got mad because they wanted Paul to lose, and you could just hear like all the discontent coming from the room. And if the vibe was we came out and got all worked up for this, it was a bummer. Overall it was a bummer. And it's, of all of the things to make this happen, like it would take someone from the monoculture era like Mike Tyson, as old and washed as he is. But like what's the future here? We're gonna have Conor McGregor and Jake Paul having an MMA fight now. That's the next thing apparently that that Paul is angling for. And I could only hope that Conor would starch him, but he's so much smaller. Even if he's roided to the gills like he is in Roadhouse, he's not going to weigh as much as this kid does, and it's just going to be a bloodbath. Because as a point of comparison, UFC is not the monoculture that this was. Because like the next night was John Jones versus Stipe, and it was disappointing for a lot of the same reasons. Because you had this washed Stipe Miocic coming out of retirement for this fight that he'd been like waiting on his ass for years, and he just got his shit pushed in. It was so sad. And while there were a couple of like good fights in the prelims, it just the vibe got really sad once the main event started.
Yeah, I feel like the day after, more people were talking about the women's fight,
Which
as
was
opposed to
excellent.
or more people were talking about the. I saw the woman's eyebrow that got split, and that was disgusting.
Yeah, because that's what we're here for. We're here for the blood and guts, man. Modern day gladiatorial combat. And and to their credit, they I don't believe they ended the fight early. They let it go, despite the gaping wound that she had. But we're here for the blood, my dude. Just bleed. I mean,
as far as
just bleed.
It's just like our movie today.
Exactly.
Our feature review.
Exactly.
So like as far as the future goes, Netflix. They've had a couple live events other than this: the Roast of Tom Brady, a Chris Rock stand-up special, a Love is Blind reunion show, which also was a clusterfuck. But they are going to have to sort of really get their shit together now, because this Christmas they get 2 NFL games for the very first time. 2 NFL games are going to be on Netflix.
Wow.
And then on January 6th, Netflix is going to become the new home of WWE Monday Night Raw. They're pulling that from the USA Network on regular cable. And so they need to figure their shit out, because a guy in Florida has already started a lawsuit against them for this, and he's looking for class action status. And as of yet, Netflix has yet to address anything about this event, about the boxing event, other than how massively popular it was for them. They have yet to comment on all of the issues people had, even though their Twitter page is filled with nothing but people complaining about it. And so I don't know, with a issue like this, what does a company like Netflix, what do they owe their customers? Do they owe them anything? Like, should they give you a statement credit on your account, like here's a free month for everyone? Or do they owe people money? Like, should they refund everybody a month of their Netflix subscription? Or what, in your opinion, do they owe people, if anything?
Because that's the thing, like it's bringing in something that is a different kind of business model into the streaming world, and the cost. Because like in theory they owe them nothing, because do you get your money back if like the latest episode of Stranger Things is low quality for you during prime time when you're trying to watch it, I don't think people get that kind of benefit. I think they just kind of get ignored. And
Yeah.
I have seen that like people who signed up for Netflix just for this event have been able to get their subscriptions like canceled with
Okay.
no fees because of saying that the quality issues were the reason why they didn't want to maintain it. Because like some people are being really petty. They're actually like going out of their way to have like actual customer service interactions with employees. And
Mhm.
it's not just I'm just gonna hit end my free trial. They are saying full out like I am bitching and complaining and this is why I'm not coming back.
Mhm.
But like because I think back to the McGregor what's his name, Mayweather fight.
Yeah.
When that happened, that was kind of a disaster too. Like these live events can go incredibly wrong and things won't load for you. Like I was at a viewing party on some guy's farm, and one of the people at the party worked for the local telecom company, and he had to like go run in to like the main like service like switcher place in town to like try and like reset shit because the whole town wasn't able to, like, everyone was losing their access to the fight. It wasn't loading correctly.
Wow.
Like so that's a somewhat regular thing in the world of these quote this would be a pay-per-view event. And in that event, yeah, people got their money back because they spent so much money and they were lucky if they actually got it to load for the main event itself.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
yeah.
it's very strange. I mean, we often talk about games. We often talk about video games on the show, particularly in the mentionables. And I'm really reminded of like this is a very similar situation to like the launch of a ultra popular video game where people will nowadays you can buy a deluxe edition of a game and it'll come with like 3 days of early access. But then the servers get slammed and you never actually get into your game until the company fixes the servers. And this literally just happened this week with the latest edition, the 2024 edition of Microsoft Flight
Oh,
Simulator.
really?
And yeah, and so I don't know. I feel like if this stuff keeps happening both in the world of video games and in the world of TV and live events, there's going to be some sort of legislation like eventually, like if this keeps happening, if these companies don't figure this shit out, there's something's gonna crop up, whether that be yeah legislation or um like FCC, something like that, some sort of body that self governs the entertainment industry. Something is gonna happen where they're gonna be forced to figure their shit out for these type of events.
'Cause we're already kind of like seeing, because of the state of California, for example, Valve and like Ubisoft and other companies have been forced to, in plain text, say you are not buying anything that you own when you quote unquote purchase this game. And that message is broadcasted to people who live outside of California. Like it was a universal change that they had to adopt because they're operating in California. And we may
Mhm.
see that kind of predicate occur here as well, where it's like, yeah, you can put these types of pay-per-view things on your you know like a la carte subscription platform, but if people aren't getting their money's worth, too bad, so sad, you're going to have to do right by them in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And yeah, we will. This might be something that we're going to talk about sooner rather than later. Again, because as we mentioned earlier, Christmas will bring 2 NFL games, and you know, I have a feeling that when it comes to the NFL, if something like this is going to happen, you're not going to be able to fuck around with them. Like
Oh.
you can't fuck the NFL, and so we might be talking about this again.
Well, and I guess that makes me. This is the question I have. Like, do they like who are they hiring to operate these events for them? And hopefully, the NFL is like, yeah, like this is the company that you work with. Like these are the contractors you hire to make sure that everything goes according to plan, because there's a variety of concerns, happening there with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Moving on to the watch list. I was able to catch a little movie from an up and coming director named Clint Eastwood that was barely in theaters because it was originally intended as a streaming only release, which is almost blasphemous when you consider who Clint Eastwood is, like what he represents for Warner Brothers, but does make sense when you actually see this movie. It is a tight little civic drama. It's a little morality play about this guy whose new father, or like his wife is like about to have a baby. That's what it is. The baby hasn't been born yet. But, he's called to jury duty for a murder trial where this guy is accused of brutally murdering his girlfriend after a bar fight. And she is played by Clint Eastwood's daughter, as it happens. But he's, selected for jury duty. And as the case, evidence is laid out, he realizes, oh shit, this was the same night where I thought I hit a deer, leaving that exact same bar where this couple was at. And he realizes that he killed this woman. And this innocent man is on trial for it. So even though like his wife had been urging him to try and get out of jury duty, he suddenly finds himself in a position where he has to be there because he wants to be involved in the process somehow. And initially, he starts doing like a 12 Angry Man thing. Well, can you put it back up and keep it safe?
I was gonna say this seems very similar to 12 Angry Men.
Yeah, and that's where like it starts out that way, where he's like, everyone's ready to make this guy guilty and go home, and he's the one introducing the shadow of doubt into people's heads. But then there's also like this feeling that he has to want to protect himself, at the same time, and in the backdrop, the DA is going through an election. It's really critical that she gets and she's played by what's her name?
Toni Collette.
Toni Collette, yes, and she's motivated to get a conviction in this case because she wants to get reelected, and eventually, it all kind of comes to a head, and it has a very interesting and ambiguous ending, where it ties everything up in a bow and then it just pulls it out and leaves you like wondering like, oh shit, where is it gonna go now? Because you think you saw like everything that that it had to give you, but like it doesn't do anything crazy. It literally does look like, in his typical style, we are just seeing the first take for every line. It's just like, it's a snappy little movie, and it it's very competently acted and written. It's tight, it's quick, and the theater experience for this, maybe not a necessity, but it would be nice to like have that ending happen with other people, because then like the reaction will like, because that's part of it. Like if people are laughing at something, like that helps elevate the experience, if you're laughing along with people. But if you're like reacting to something like that, like oh, just like the shock or the realization of what's occurring, like it could serve that as well. But you'll definitely be able to watch this for yourselves this holiday season on Max, because that's where it probably should have always just gone. But we just need to cling to the past a little bit and give old Uncle Clint, his due. He did do a very good job here.
Yeah, especially for like, what is he, 93 now?
Oh my god.
I don't even know how
is he really that old?
I think he's 93, yeah. I don't know how he even gets out of bed, let alone directs a movie.
94 years old, dude.
94.
This man was born in 1930. Holy shit! How can
Yeah,
he keep doing it? Yeah, this is probably his last movie.
I would assume so. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's getting up there, and yeah, I've you mentioned his sort of style of directing where he only does like one or two takes and then he just moves on. And are there any scenes in this where that is like evident, where you're watching it and you're kind of like, oh, they should have maybe done another take there? I don't know about that, you know?
Anytime a non like headline character said anything,
Mhm.
I'll be real here. Like if it's not J.K. Simmons talking, like if it's just like one of the other jurors being like, I don't care, I need to go home and feed my family. It's like, damn, like they gave her one shot at this and they just said, good, moving on. And yeah, there's some dodgy moments like that where it's like there's just a disparity between the kind of like work that the more famous actors are able to put out there versus the day players, as it were. It's like
Mhm.
they had one shot, so they kind of ham it a little bit. Like their facial expressions are a little too stagey versus like there's no subtlety to what they're doing. And then all of the stars are doing this great like acting kind of thing, and it is kind of funny now that you mention it. That's an
Yeah.
aspect of it.
Okay. Yeah, I still do want to see it still. I think it was actually already announced that this is going to be dropping on Max on December 20th. So, yeah, you probably at this point if you haven't seen it already, you probably can wait, I would assume.
December 20th. Want to
Yep.
know, this is an off-topic fact, but that is also the day that Ron Howard's How the Grinch Stole Christmas will be arriving on streaming, because it is very deliberately not on streaming and only available for rent and purchase right now. You know how infuriating
Oh,
that is for my household
that's weird.
who live on the
What
Grinch.
a yeah, what a strange movie for that to be the case. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, for some reason you could watch the other
Mhm.
two Grinches, but that one
Not
you
that one.
you have to pay a premium for it. So yeah, we did in fact spend $4 and rent it. We are that family.
Mm.
What's up, honey?
Mm.
Not right now. I can't help you with that. That takes too much time. Okay. Moving on.
So,
Yeah, we also have the I guess the first entry in the expanded Duneverse coming to us with Dune Prophecy on Max. So, honey, there's no more tape on this. I can't help you. You used up all the tape. What did you make of this? What did you think this was going to be going in?
yeah, I don't know. I feel like I didn't really know much about this beforehand, and so I kind of walked into the first episode and I was immediately like, "Oh wow, this is 10,000 years before the movies take place and the book." And so I think that immediately kind of puts the show off on like, gives it a fatal flaw basically because
Mm,
I feel like it's set so long before the movies that it hardly even matters to somebody like me who needs that connection to just get me in the door because I will remind people again that I'm not a Dune head. Chuck is the resident Dune head of the podcast, so I don't know. I just feel like I needed a more tangible connection between this show and the films, but it's set so far in the past. I feel like it hardly even matters. And um, yeah, it was fine, I guess. I mean, a little dry, maybe. You can definitely tell that this is like the CW version of
yeah.
the look and the feel of the movies. I mean, they do an okay job of approximating the look and feel of Denis Villeneuve's films, but you can definitely tell it's a little cheaper. It's made a little bit on the cheap. But I don't know. I guess I will probably watch more episodes. It was okay to me. That's is kind of how I would say it. But yeah, how was it for you?
Basically, this just made me wish that there was a third season of Raised by Wolves and not this.
Yeah.
Because it's yet again, I don't know, as the resident Dune head, it'd be very careful with those. Put those back. Those are glass measuring cups. Put
Oh
those
boy.
back where you found them. Where was I? Okay, yeah. So as the Dune
Raised by
head,
Wolves.
yeah, like it has Travis Fimmel. You have, because this takes place, like I guess it's unclear exactly how long after the Butlerian Jihad, but just enough that it's still fresh. Even though I think they get some critical, like new, like this is new Dune lore wrong.
Mm.
They get things wrong in the way that a CW show would get things wrong about a DC property, or that Amazon would get wrong about Lord of the Rings. Like, it wasn't an Atreides that defeated the robot uprising. It was House Carino. It was the Emperor. It's why he became the Emperor. He helped lead that. What, honey?
Mm-hmm.
You need to stop interrupting me. Put those back where you found them. I mean, those are for birthdays only. So like getting a glimpse to the Butlerian Jihad, which is one of those things that Herbert left a mystery. He left it vague. He said this is what it was, but then he didn't explore it further. And it didn't become, I guess, relevant again until like Chapter House and like, what is it? Yeah, Heretics of Dune, which are like the last two books that he wrote. And it put them away, please. It just made me want them to have just done a series about the Butlerian Jihad, because that raises the other like issue I have with this. This was supposed to be called Dune Sisterhood and be about the Bene Gesserit. And obliquely, that's what this is supposed to be about as well. But behind the scenes, after Sisterhood was like paused or like canceled, it was given to a different production team. So instead of leaning into the Bene Gesserit side of things, they seem to have also opened up more doors into just the Game of Thrones palace intrigue aspect of it, and to try and make it more like the movies as opposed to just so focused on them. And it kind of shows that it went from being a cohesive idea that was then just handed off to another group to try and salvage, and it's just beyond their capabilities. Like we have the point of reference of the movies, and these just don't hold up compared to that. Like the writing, oh my god, like people are talking and I'm just like, why are we talking about this? Why does everything just sound so dull, instead of intriguing? And yeah, basically I was annoyed throughout it, but not to the extent that I won't watch it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some very like weird scenes that are they feel odd in this universe, like the club scene.
Yeah, what the fuck is that? Dune nightclub scene?
It's like,
fuck out of
yeah.
here. It should just be a pleasure dome with a bunch of giant pillows and people smoking, like having spice orgies. Like that's what we should be getting. This is boring. This is teeny bopper bullshit. Get it out of my Dune, please.
Yeah, I mean, by far, I think the most interesting thing about this show is probably Travis Fimmel's character, and he was probably the best part about Raised by Wolves too.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I feel like there's definitely some meta casting going on here, because he is literally playing his Raised by Wolves character, but just in the Dune universe. And
He didn't change his hairstyle at all. His beard and hair
like
are the exact same. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to know what's going on with him, and so if anything, that is what will keep me watching the show, I think.
Especially since he immolated that entire royal family or something like that. The ending of that first episode left it very unclear what was going on to me. but like he was
Mhm.
like an agent. It's like an assassin, essentially. Is that the vibe?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he because he immolated the young kid who was supposed to marry that princess, and then also the Bene Gesserit woman
That's what
who
it
went
was.
back, yeah, back to the planet. And so, unless there is like some sort of like pyromancy powers in the Dune universe, I'm pretty sure he probably just poisoned them, poisoned both of them, is my guess. I guess I don't know for sure.
Yeah, we'll have to see what other aspects of the universe they get into. Oh God,
Hmm.
okay. Yanking on cords.
Yeah, we'll see in the weeks going forward, but yeah, I guess I'll move on to my my last entry here in the watch
This
list.
seemed
The
interesting. I didn't know they were doing
It
this.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Day of the Jackal. It's a Peacock show. They have currently aired 6 out of the 10 episodes, of which I have seen all of them. And of course, this is based on a book from the 70s, which has already been adapted twice. And now this is the third time. And so um, it's funny that as they adapt this, they sort of adapt it to fit the politics of the era and the aesthetic of the era that it's being adapted into, because um, basically this is about a ultra skilled assassin who has been hired to kill a prominent person. And we follow him, and then we also follow the police as they are always sort of one step behind him. And in the original movie, which came out the same year as the book did in the 1970s, the target of the assassination is French President Charles de Gaulle.
Mm-hmm.
And that movie it was very much followed the drier political intrigue of the book. And then in 1997, we got a movie starring Richard Gere and Bruce Willis that pretty much was a throwaway action movie. And they set it in the United States. They took it out of Europe. And then now in 2024, this adaptation sort of goes back to the political intrigue, and it makes the target of the assassin a tech billionaire. And so, of course, it's adapting everything to our current time, our current political climate. And the feeling that I get from this show is it's essentially a cross between David Fincher's The Killer, his most recent movie, and then the Amazon Jack Ryan show. That's kind of
Mm.
how I would describe it. And the linchpin which makes this all work, the thing that makes this show gel together is Eddie Redmayne's performance. He is really really great as the Jackal, as the assassin. I just can't believe that this is the same guy who was in Les Mis and The Danish Girl, and in this show he's this like just steely-eyed contract killer who is just a chameleon. um and it's hard to overcome. He is the main character of the show, and he is a contract killer, and it's so hard to make this guy likable, but he pulls it off.
Mm.
So much so that when he starts killing people, you sort of have to remind yourself, oh yeah, this guy is kind of a monster. This guy kind of like but he's so likable. It's so weird. And so he is great. But then unfortunately there's a flip side to the casting in this show, where the other sort of not quite main character, but the other sort of second build person is Lashana Lynch plays the MI6 agent who is going after the Jackal. And the problems with her character, they sort of start with her appearance, in that it's not believable that this woman is an MI6 agent. She's slightly overweight, she's out of shape. She is a woman in her early 30s who we are led to believe is this badass field agent who is also the MI6's expert on gun manufacturing. And I don't know, I
Mm.
feel like she was really miscast. And then, I mean, beyond beyond that fact, she just doesn't put in the work. I mean, her acting is very wooden. It sounds like she's saying a lot of these, she's saying all this gun jargon and all this like, she's talking about like bullet drop and like distance sniping distances, and it just sounds like she's saying everything for the first time. It sounds she doesn't pull off the fact that she is this expert. And I don't think that it's enough to ruin the show, but it makes what would have been a 10 out of 10 like show into like a lesser than just a good show basically. And so otherwise I think it's a great show, and I'm going to keep watching it. This is my current show of all the TV that I'm watching right now. This is like the current show that once an episode ends, I'm already like fiending for the next one. And so, yeah, I fully endorse it still. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it goes. It's already been renewed for a second season,
Oh, nice.
which is kind of strange. It's kind of this show. I think it's going to have the Shogun problem where this first season is going to cover the book in its entirety, I'm pretty sure. And so it's going to be like, okay, where do we go now with the second season after you've adapted the work already in its entirety? I guess we'll
Yeah.
see, but
Yeah, well, what was that one show about that female assassin? With
Female Assassin.
with like what's her name? I can't, because like that I can't remember what it's fucking called.
Killing Eve?
Yeah, like cause
Killing
like
Eve? Yeah.
yeah, like because that went like I don't know, like that was a show that it felt like it went on way too long. And
Yes. Yeah.
and it maybe could have wrapped up in one, but it got really popular and acclaimed, so they just contrived a way every season to keep it going.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's a trap. You got to be careful. So I'm really worried about Shogun.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll have to see. Like this could maybe work better, because more isn't always a good thing, as we are about to discuss in our feature review here for Gladiator 2. Take it away, Matt.
Yeah, so for me, I'll just come out and say it. This film sort of falls into the why bother category for me, and it's mainly for two reasons. I get the sense while watching Gladiator 2 that like a lot of Ridley Scott's films, half of this film is probably already on the cutting room floor, or is still on the cutting room floor. Because the feeling I get while watching this is that it's simultaneously overstuffed with subplots and characters, but then it's also lacking the running time to cover it all. And I feel like at this point, Ridley Scott, it seems like he films his movies with a longer cut in mind that inevitably gets trimmed for theaters, and then they're just like a year after it comes out on Blu-ray, they're like, okay, let's put the director's cut out there. Let's put the actual cut out there. And then inevitably all of the movie reviewers go gaga for that director's cut, and they're like, this is the real cut. And so yeah, I don't know, it feels that way to me, because there are entire subplots in this film that go nowhere, and I can just see where the seams are. And then the other reason why this doesn't really work for me is like a lot of the belated sequels that we've been getting these days, like The Force Awakens and The Incredibles 2. This movie is such a retread of the first movie, in that a soldier is haunted by the death of a family member. He is sold into slavery. He proves himself in a smaller arena. He is promised revenge by his slave owner. He makes his way to the Colosseum in Rome, where he gains the respect of the crowd and his fellow slaves. They rally around him, yada, yada, yada. And that's kind of what both these movies are. And it's very, very close to the first movie. And I will give this film credit for sort of changing things up in the third act. I think that's where things got a little more interesting, where it diverged from the first movie. Very stellar effects, great setting. You can see the money on the screen, and so those are all things I'll give it credit for. But I think that this movie just kind of it fails as as a comparison to the first movie, but it works as a companion. Is kind of how I would say it kind of equals out to. But yeah, what did you think of Gladiator 2?
You know, it's like that's what annoyed me about it, was the fact that it literally was just a lesser version, beat for beat, nearly moment for moment. Like this, to the first one. But what this one was an opportunity for Ridley Scott to do all of the things he wasn't able to do in the first one. Like I think one of the original drafts of the first Gladiator had a naval battle in it. And so now it's like with the sequel, he gets like 2 fucking naval battles, which is pretty fucking cool, for him, because he gets to really dive into it. But like I just wish that because like this sequel has been a long time coming. There was the rumored, or not even rumored, like it was outright like written and considered before Russell Crowe like put the kibosh on it. But they were gonna do this like really gonzo Gladiator 2 where Maximus is like reincarnated to fight in like every major field of war like throughout like the 20th century, or like even before. Like, and it was like we were gonna see him like Wolverine on D-Day, basically, after we saw him fight in the Revolutionary War or like the Napoleonic Wars. Like it was gonna get really bizarre real quick, because like that script is out there. But I do want to commend how it brought us into the new setting, though, because like the animated scot-free like title card, how that style just instantly flowed into giving us all of our favorite moments from the first Gladiator movie, including Commodus's like face that he does, and that like Numidian archer, during like one of the battles, like she's like a gladiatrix on a chariot shooting arrows at people. Like they did all that. Like I liked that. I thought that was a neat way to call back to why we're all like having our butts in the seats in the first place. But then I just didn't care about goddamn anything going on. Yeah, good for you. You got David, Jacoby, like out of not David. What's his name? The he played one of the senators in the first one.
Oh, is it Derek?
Derek Jacobi. That's what it is. Yeah. The brother Cadfael and I Claudius, and then in of course in Gladiator. I can't believe that character is still living. He should be dead. He's so old. But we need to have familiar faces. And I guess Denzel is there, and like there was something a little intriguing about his character and what he was had cooking. But it just wasn't as resonant. All of the things that resonated about the first one, the tale of revenge, it was so much more substantial and affecting the first time around. In this one, Pedro Pascal's general is literally just following orders. Yeah, he directly led to the death of Lucius's wife, but that's just war, baby. If you were trying to like take care of her, why was she on the fucking front fighting with you? If you were trying to keep her safe, she should be somewhere way out there where her death will be, totally unforgivable, and the revenge is necessary. His revenge quest just felt tacked on. I didn't buy it. I didn't care about it. I wanted Lucius to die every time he was fighting. I don't know, I just didn't give a shit. But then it did get like really like fucked up with all like the scenarios they came up with for like how they were gonna fight and like punish each other and everything, and like how his mom was basically just gonna be killed by the Praetorian Guard, like as he's like the lone guy who's gonna be surrounded on all sides by like 50 men, like who has to defend her, they found ways to raise the stakes, but the story beats. And like literally like one of the ending story beat involves, oh, you need to give this special ring to this one general who's just happens to be nearby Rome, and we could bring him in, and then that will totally turn the tides in our favor. I got really bored with it, and and really wished we could have had the Gonzo Russell Crowe, is Kratos or something like that. Like that could have been metal.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's I think by far the most interesting part of this movie is probably Denzel Washington, and he's sort of the thing because he's just so charismatic, and I mean he does what he does in every movie now. He plays himself. But I can't fault him for it because every time he gets on the screen, I sort of sit up in my chair a little taller because he's just doing so many weird things with his performance, like how he like is constantly playing with like the sleeves on his robes, and I'm like, why did you choose to do that? Like why? Or like the constant like kissing of like hands and cheeks, and his weird relationship with that senator that he owed him all the money. I'm like,
Yeah.
what are these two guys like gay for each other? I don't know what's going on here.
There
And
apparently was a lip to lip kiss that was cut. That happened.
That's the word, and I know exactly where it probably happened in the movie. And so yeah, he's so interesting, his presence in this movie. And eventually he actually, I mean, once things start to really diverge from the first movie in the third act, it's like, okay, this is pretty interesting how he is basically this entire time had this sort of secret plot to become emperor. And I was sort of like, okay, this might be a little more interesting what's going on here. But then, of course, they lead you to believe that there's going to be this giant battle, and then all of these soldiers convene on this field outside of Rome, and then Paul Mescal just cuts his arm off and stabs him, and then he just sort of dies in the river. And it's like, oh, okay, I guess we're not going to do this now. We're not going to have this battle. And I guess that's sort of the point of everything, is that he Lucius stops the bloodshed, but it was, I don't know, anticlimactic, I guess.
But he fulfills the dream of Rome, free, or whatever bullshit it is. But that's what annoyed me. Like the we haven't even talked about the brother emperors yet, and it's like they would have only come to power because she sent Lucius away. Like why send Lucius away at all? Like why not keep him there, groom him to be emperor, everything's chill. Why bring up these fucking psychotics? It's just because we need a Commodus equivalent, to just be sacrificial lambs to the real villain of the movie, which is Denzel Washington's character. And
like you said before, a lot of this movie, it is the first movie, but it's more. It's like we need to do what the first movie did, but we need more of it. So instead of one emperor, there's two crazy emperors, or instead of one gladiator scene that has an animal, we're gonna have three animals. We're gonna have rhinos and baboons.
Those baboons
and
fucking
sharks.
ruled.
The baboons were cool. Yeah, I loved that. That scene was cool. But the other ones were just kind of like, whatever. And so, yeah, a lot of this movie is just like, we're going to do what the first movie did, but we have to times it by 2 or 3, X by 2 or 3. And so that was, just very, very strange. And I did kind of like the guy from the White Lotus, Fred Heckinger. He played one of the emperors, and I liked the sort of hinted at backstory to his character that he had syphilis and
Yeah.
it was like destroying his brain. That was pretty interesting, I thought. And his little monkey that he made his like second in command. That was I liked all that stuff.
Yeah,
The
because
other guy
that's
was
how
whatever.
that's how Denzel convinced him to kill his brother. You know, it's like, what are they gonna do to Damas? What are they gonna do to your monkey friend? You know, like there are nice touches, and this will be kind of fun to just throw on to like tune out during the talking and then come back in when they're having like the gladiator fights, because yeah, those are awesome. Like that's worth the price of admission on its own.
Mhm.
But it just, yeah, the and I'm glad you brought up the whole director's cut mentality that
Yeah.
Ridley Scott has, because oh my god, like the telltale signs of the trimming is everywhere, and it's almost his hallmark at this point. Like, I think the only movie he's ever done that didn't have an accompanying like director's cut with it, you know, at least in my memory, was Matchstick Men, which was his Nick Cage con artist movie that no one remembers, but you know, it was definitely a thing. And because he tried to be all Spielberg for a second there and make a normal movie, and I don't think people liked it. I remember liking it, but every time he makes a director's cut, I think like the real, you know, Kingdom of Heaven was the one that really made people believers in the Ridley Scott director's cut superiority. Yep. And I tried watching that Napoleon director's cut, man. It was awful. It was even worse. And as for the ahistorical nature of these, that like there's no point in getting mad about it. Like, this is all just fantasy. Yeah, and there are even less like actual historical people represented in this. Like, we don't have Marcus Aurelius to like actually lean back on, because yeah, so much of this is just nonsense. It's as much, you know, fan fiction, you know, as what's going on in Dune Prophecy right now. People are, yeah, people are just having fun.
I'm glad you brought up the deleted scenes again, because, or the director's cut, because I like I said in my intro, I can see where the trimming is, and I want to know if you have any theories as to, you know, when we inevitably get this director's cut, what we are going to get more scenes of, because I have theories as to what exactly it's going to be. And I know that one thing we will definitely get more of is Rory McCann's character, because I'm like, when I realized who that was, I was like, why is he even in this movie? Because so if people don't know, the guy who played the Hound in the Game of Thrones, he is like the like second in command general of like the army of Rome. And I'm like, what is this dude even doing in this film? So I know there's more scenes of him. I know there's more scenes of Lucius and his wife at the beginning in Numidia, because their story was just fast tracked. Like, we got nothing of them. I know that, you know, like we said before, there's definitely footage out there of a kiss between Denzel Washington and the guy who owes him money. And then there's probably more of Derek Jacobi's character out there, because while he is in the movie, he's barely in it.
He has like a scene. He has like
yeah, like one scene. And so, yeah, did you have any theories as to where you think there might be some more, you know, scenes in there?
Honestly, I think you covered all the bases already. You know, like what I would hope to see more of, and that's, I don't know, I guess it's more so my beef in general with his wife's role in the movie at all. Like the family in the original movie worked because they were this distant memory, and we only got them in glimpses until we saw their charred, crucified corpses. And in this one, she just gets an arrow to the boob and dies. You know, like if we spend any more time with her and they're like talking about, oh yes, I can't wait to go farm, further south, away from the coast, away from the evil Romans, like whatever they're going to be, doing, it's just going to be a waste of time. Like it should have been cut. You know what I mean? And yeah, I don't know. I think she should have died in a more brutal way. It should have been more fucked up. And maybe there's an alternate version where she's like flayed alive and Pedro Pascal goes full like evil heel on him and there's like nothing redeemable, but they for some reason had to make him redeemable. And I don't know. I just don't know.
Yeah.
I hope for more from Rory McCann because like I didn't even realize that was him until I saw the credits and I was like, what the fuck? Like what?
Yeah.
Why are you here? Why are you here? And I just there was such an homoerotic edge to like the movie, like especially from like the Denzel Washington's character. Obviously, he literally talks about like lying with men. Like that comes up. But even like the emperors, they have like their boy eunuchs on like with on leashes, like in one scene. Like there's just got to be more debauchery to it because that's the angle they're going with it. A Play-Doh taco for me.
Oh. You better eat it.
Yeah.
That's one thing I did want to mention before we start moving off of this is the callbacks to the first film, the explicit callbacks. This movie, it went a little overboard with them, but I'm so thankful that they didn't go entirely overboard because of course we get, Maximus's armor is there and we get all of, the quoted lines, strength and honor and all that. And the picking up of the sand in the arena and, when he goes like this with it. So we get all the callbacks. And then we get to the very end of the movie and we get that scene of Lucius in the Colosseum. And he's sort of like looking up at the sky and he looks down at the sand. And I'm like, oh my God, is he going to literally dig up the fucking like stone carvings that Maximus, buried at the end of the first one? And thank God he didn't do that because I thought, even though it wouldn't have made any sense because of course they just got done flooding the Colosseum, so it wouldn't have made any sense. I mean, those stone carvings are long gone by this point, but I'm so thankful that they didn't do that because it seemed like they were going to, and that there might be an alternate cut out there where they do that because it was just such a weirdly structured scene. But the callbacks are numerous and overboard in my opinion,
but necessary. You got to have member berries for everybody.
Yeah,
and it's just one of those things. Like this is good, holiday fare. Like the first time I saw Gladiator was when a family, like an extended family member brought it to Christmas on VHS tape. And it was a big deal that I got to see this R-rated film. But as long as it was historical epic, it was okay.
Those are the rules. Yeah, those are like the rules to late 90s, early 2000s parenting is if something is a historical epic, then the violence is okay. And so, I was in the same boat.
Just close your eyes for the nudity. The sex scenes in Braveheart were especially memorable, as for a young man. Moving on to the mentionables. You have a new comic to talk about.
Yeah, this one, I wanted to mention, this is on its fourth issue at this point, so we're pretty good ways into it, but I've just been loving it, so I had to mention it on here. This is called The Power Fantasy, and this is the new comic from storied comic book writer Kieran Gillen, who is always a quality writer. And this particular comic is about basically... what if there were a very, very small number of people in the world with superpowers, but we sort of treated them like they were nuclear weapons. In that, um, each country kind of has their own superpowered person, and they're sort of used as like means of like diplomacy with other countries or weapons of war. And that's kind of the angle on it is, what if superheroes were treated like nuclear weapons? And I love this series. I love that premise, and it's very, very politically, minded, and I've just been loving it so far. It's got really great art by Casper Wingard,
Hmm.
who is, if anybody knows the series Homesick Pilots, he does a lot of image stuff. Both Kieran Gillen and Casper Wingard are like in the Image Comics stable of creators, where they just pump out series for Image. And so yeah, really, really have been enjoying this. Go and check it out. The first trade paperback should probably be out around the time that the new year changes over.
Right on. That
Yeah.
does sound very, very interesting.
Mhm.
I've been dipping my toes back into comics a little bit when I'm procrastinating at the office. I have to confess. I reread Baltimore.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Hell yeah. And I think like We Stand on Guard, that miniseries about like what if the U.S. invaded Canada.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. I haven't read that one.
by
I've
Brian
heard of
K.
it.
Vaughan. So
Yeah.
I have the itch, and this looks very interesting because
Mhm.
I need some fantasy politic to get my brain juicing, because I've been brain rotting over the past several like months and weeks with political streamers and and commentary YouTube channels, and the chief, the high priest of the commentary political community, for me, is Destiny, the former Minecraft StarCraft streamer, who is now pretty much just a like a not, I wouldn't say left wing, but just like a democratic standard bearer. And I didn't get a chance to really talk about this during the time of the election, but his election stream was a hoot. Because
Mm.
like what I love during an election, presidential election period, is when there's a meltdown happening. Like when the Young Turks melted down in 2016, that was choice. When Tim Pool was having his, like right of center meltdown in 2020 over Trump losing, that was memorable. Because I just love seeing people who won't believe their eyes and ears, and or will just delude themselves in a moment. And Destiny was doing much the same thing, but it's because he was kind of putting on a show. He wanted Kamala
Mhm.
Harris to win, and even though like all the more rational voices like Amaranth, who's pictured here sitting next to him, were saying, hey, like this is over, he'd be like, no, Vadim, pull up Wisconsin, pull up like the votes that haven't been counted in Wisconsin, how are we looking there? Oh yeah, we got this, now go to Pennsylvania. And he was just like you're constantly just bobbing and weaving and coping, and it was entertaining. And then after like everything was in the bag, the next day he was able just to like hit reset and just be like, okay, we lost, I'm ready to move on. And he didn't quite become the lol cow that everybody else in his position becomes. Like he kept it light. And if you want to relive election night, from that point of view, it's pretty funny, and and pretty, there's it's not Schadenfreude, it's just it's different, because like otherwise I would sit back and just be like, oh man, this person's crashing out hard, this is going to be great, so many memes are going to be born from this. But he did a good job of keeping it level headed. But yeah.
I love this picture because I didn't even know that this existed, this stream, but I mean, just this picture that you have pulled up here, it's like a former StarCraft streamer, and then a former like titty streamer,
Yeah.
like talking about the election with like a with like a bag of Skittles on the table, a Bush
Bush
Light, a
Light.
Liquid Death. I
Yeah.
think there's a Burger King bag there. Like, I just love this photo.
No, they did a really cool setup because there was this stream, which was like the deep analysis stream, and then they just had this hangout stream, which was like in the same like part of the condo that they had this table set up at, so you could hear like Turkey Tom and like the other like goofballs hamming it up in the background while these guys are all like dying depths of despair watching the results come in. And yeah, and everyone is just getting trashed. This one guy named Abba, who's a part of the duo Abba and Preach, he's like literally just like taking pulls from like bottles of liquor and then sitting down and being like, "You guys know she lost, right?" So like they really had fun with it, and it was just all of that cohort. And then they were the best though. You know what Alan Lichtman is? The guy that he wrote this like pseudo political science theory where like there's keys to the presidency. And you have these yes and no, like true or false propositions. And depending on what the answers to those questions are, it'll determine who will win. And like this guy predicted that Trump won in 2016. The only time he ever had gotten it wrong previously was in 2000 when Gore lost to Bush, because he chalks that up to, oh, there was shenanigans with the election. Like that one doesn't count against me. And he predicted Harris was going to win this time. And they were like going to Alan Lichtman's stream throughout the night and just being like, where are your keys, Alan? You lost your keys. We're all fucked now because of you. You called it wrong. And I don't know. It's all just, you have to have fun in this day and age. You can't be so deathly serious all of the time, because and Destiny, he's not someone I agree with 100% of the time. He's actually kind of repugnant in some of the things he believes, but I will always respect his ability to argue about anything and argue a point to its absolute limit, no matter what it is. And he's a bit of an asshole, but he's kind of become my asshole as I've I've tried to avoid dominating my perspective in consumption. I try and mix it up a little bit more these days, because otherwise you run the risk of becoming ideologically possessed, which is how you wind up with Rome Sweet Rome collapsing, which could be us. we're the new Rome after all. But that kind of does it for us this week. We're going to be popping out some long discussed minisodes, at least on my part, and then my Northern Lights retrospective and your Thanksgiving cornucopia, to avoid an awkward family gathering, what movies you can put on. They'll be coming up probably even before this episode goes up. But then I'll be doing a minisode about my favorite miniseries on December 2nd, and we're hopefully going to be reviewing The Return on December 9th. So we're going to keep things firmly in the Mediterranean for a little bit, which is kind of neat. We don't usually see that kind of symmetry. But yeah, that kind of does it. Thank you for watching, everybody, and have a good week.
Yeah, see ya.